All right, so the definition of a negative exponent, if x is to the negative 1 power, it's the reciprocal of that. You would write this with 1 as a placeholder in the numerator and an x in the denominator. If it was 1 over a to the negative 3, you take the reciprocal of that, and that becomes a to the third over 1. Need to know with this, if you have an entire fraction, and we talk about this a lot, if it was x over y and it was negative 1, this would be a good example of the power rule. So you take the reciprocal of that entire fraction, so that would equal y over x, and all of that now would be to the first power. If you want to go ahead and think of this as the negative, as kind of like a flag, and think of it as it is on the wrong side of the fraction. So it was in the numerator and it just gets moved down. If it was in the denominator, the whole piece would get moved up. And when that happens, the exponent turns back to a positive. Once it's on the correct side of the fraction and that negative sign is gone and it's moved to the correct side, then it becomes a positive exponent. So it's not a negative number as in it's telling you to do the opposite of the number. It's telling you to put it on the opposite side of the fraction. By definition, it is the reciprocal of something. Okay? This one is just the same thing as we've talked about before. That's negative 5 times negative 5. That is a positive 25. This one is the opposite, right, of 5 times 5. Or this one is just equal to a negative 25. Now here, hopefully the use with the parentheses has gotten to you by now, and you see that the only thing that's being raised to the negative exponent is the x. So this one, the 3 stays in the numerator, and x to the 5th goes to the denominator. The next one, what I have with this is the whole thing is being applied to the negative exponent. So that means both of those go in the denominator, and it becomes 1 over 3 to the 5th times x to the 5th. 1 over 243 x to the 5th. So for this first question, remember this negative 3 on the x is the only one and the only part that moves. This one moves up, and then that becomes 1, and the negatives 2 stay in the same place. And when I move the x to the 3rd, that becomes positive 3 as an exponent. You do not have to write the 1 as there as a placeholder because you already have something else in the numerator. So your final answer with that would be x to the 3rd over negative 2. It would not be incorrect if you left it as a 1 as a placeholder. So when I flip this whole thing, I flip the entire fraction, but what stays the same is that negative. That negative on the inside doesn't go away. The only thing that becomes a positive is the 2 because I took the reciprocal of that. So that's just negative 2 squared, or that is equal to 4. So again, what you want to do with this one is you just want to go ahead and multiply the 7. That is negative times a 2. And that'll give you your negative 14. And then you add all of your x's, exponents on the x. So it's positive 3 plus a negative 5 plus a negative 2. So everything in this chapter, you never want to leave your answer as a negative exponent. That's not going to be okay. You must turn that exponent into a positive. So you have to rewrite that as negative 14 all over x, and now that would be a positive 4 to get that as your final answer.